Welcome, everyone, to episode 14 of the Most Interesting People in Logistics. Today's guest is Tim Hyam. He is the president and CEO at the FreightCaviar.com, also known as Ascend TMS. Ascend TMS has over 40,000 clients in over 20 countries. Tim, thank you so much for taking your time to be on the show today.
Thank you for taking your time to be on your show today.
Of course. Tim, you have a fascinating life. You've done so much. And I would love to just from the get-go, start off with, if you could tell us where you're from and basically just give us a glimpse into your professional career.
I sometimes joke that, I'm from Eastern Alabama. People can't quite figure out my accent, but I'm from the UK, came here 33 years ago. I'm 54 years old now. I came here to America when I was 21. Settled in South Carolina, worked my way down toward Disney World, and I never left Florida. So here I am living on a small island on the Gulf Coast of Florida.
It's much better than the UK with the weather.
Yeah, absolutely. I was there for 3 months, actually. I just got back last month. I went for 3 months, and by the end of it, I was sick and tired of the rain and the wind. So
yeah, I could imagine. Tim, before we started recording, you were telling me how you sold 2 businesses or 3 businesses.
Yeah, no, 2. So I successfully exited 2 businesses, built them from nothing, sold them. This is my 3rd. Ascend TMS is probably my last rodeo, if I'm honest. I enjoy what I do. We've had, offers to buy us, but we've not taken any VC money. We're highly profitable here. I mean, profits, I don't want to say too much, but it's in the many millions of dollars a year in profit, not revenue. And, I don't know why I would want to sell. Things are going really well. We continue to grow. We've got a fantastic team. Nobody leaves us. We do annual company vacations every year for all the staff and their families. I've been doing this for 20 years. When we went to the UK, we took all the staff and their families to the UK. They split time up, of course. That's why I was there for 3 months. The year before that, we went to a resort in Florida because of COVID. This year, we're going to go to, we just announced it the other day, we're taking all of the staff and their families to Medellin in Colombia. And so I'll be down there for probably a month, and then all of the staff come, and, we have usually hire vans to take them to all the sites. And that's part of, Ascend. It's being part of the family means, we treat you like family. We probably pay everybody way too much money. We just gave out record bonuses to everybody for our results last year. And so Ascend is my 3rd attempt at running a company, but this one I'm pretty sure I won't sell it.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit about the other 2 companies?
Yeah, so the first one was basically I sold it in April the 16th, 1998. It was a company that I'll give you the very short version. So wind the clock back, your time machine back to 1998. When you wanted to get yourself an insurance quote for your car or your home, you'd go to an insurance agent and you go into their office or call them and you say, I'd like a car. I'd like my Toyota Corolla to be insured, please. And they would literally go into 5 different green screens and type your information, Paul, 5 times. You type your address 5 times, type all your information 5 times to get you 5 quotes. So at the time, there was this brand new thing called a browser. Mosaic was the name of the browser. And what we did is put an overlay to it for the agent so that they could type your name and address, Paul, once. And then we would go to those 5 different green screens 5 times, enter the information for the agent, and bring the information back on one screen. So it basically saved, give or take, 80% of the time that it was required to get Paul the quote. That's an oversimplification. It did it for automobile, for home, for life insurance. And we grew that business quite a lot. And a publicly traded company bought us called HomeCom, which basically made, for lack of a better word, online banking software, which at the time was brand new. So you could log into Bank of America and check your account. You can do a lot more with online banking today. But at the time, that's all you could really do. You could log in, you could check your account, you could maybe move money from your checking to your savings account. And so this company bought our company because they wanted to sell insurance to the people that were logging into these online banking portals. Because when Paul logs into your online banking, we know that Paul's got $10 million in his checking account and you've got great credit. So, why not offer you a really good quote for your insurance? And we can do it all in the background rather than, Tim Hyam with terrible credit and $1 in his account. You don't want to give him a quote for insurance. And so that's the company I sold the first time. And that was April the 16th, 1998. And then the second company is a company I started in 2002, which was essentially a freight brokerage. Got into it by complete accident. The company essentially was moving plant material, plants, small trees, to property developers all over the southeast of the United States. So imagine Marriott Corporation building, some new big resort, and the landscape requirements were literally hundreds, if not thousands, of trees and shrubs and bushes. Well, a lot of that stuff came out of Florida because we grow here all the time in Florida, 365 days a year. And so the nursery that basically I met my first wife, and she was growing these plants, thousands of them. And she used a brokerage. I'll never forget the name, Lighthouse Brokerage, they were called. And the biggest problem she had is she would say, look, every time I call this guy, he says the truck's going to be here and he never shows up. It's always too late. And the guy's never got the right equipment. He's never got E-Track in it. It's a disaster. So I said, and I saw the trucks coming in, and they were always late and the guys didn't know where they were going. They didn't have the right paperwork. So I said, do you have Microsoft Excel on your, everybody has Excel on their computers, right? Microsoft Office. And she did. And so we wrote a very, very basic TMS system. It was just nothing more than a check-in facility for the drivers to check in, and it would print out the right bill of lading. At the time, I didn't know it was called a bill of lading. It would, which is all of the manifest of what was on the truck. It would tell him where he was going for. Sometimes there was other pickups to do before he went off to, say, Atlanta. And some of the other nurseries around the area found out about this and said, oh, when are you going back to Atlanta again, or Charleston or Birmingham? And we say, oh, well, we're going back on Thursday. And they say, well, can you stop here and pick up some of our stuff? And so we made this multi-pickup TMS. And then we started doing regular runs, going all the time to Charleston, and then, up to Atlanta, then to Birmingham. And so we would do that twice a week. And things just grew and grew. And Home Depot found out about this and came to us and said, look, we've got massive problems with our plant deliveries. Again, will you fly up to come talk to us? And I got on a plane and went to Atlanta, and I think this was 2004 maybe. And I met with Home Depot, and they basically during that meeting handed their entire nationwide plant delivery business to us to manage all of it, because 90% of everything that they sold came out of Florida. And there's a few other things that came out of Southern Texas and a few other more localized plant materials. But I said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. And I had no idea if we could do it, of course. But we successfully grew my prior two companies. And that business, by the way, that brokerage business, we had trucks attached to it so we could look like we were asset based. And we grew it and grew it and grew it to about 40 million, just under $40 million a year. And we sold it to private equity.
That's fascinating. Could you tell us how much you sold the first business for? Or
no, I can tell you that it was definitely enough with my prior exit to never have to work again. Okay. And so I don't know, I started this up.
So between 1998 and 2002, because what were you doing between those years?
Consulting. I basically came to Florida. So the company that bought my company was in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like it. I think I was 28 or 29 at the time. And actually maybe a bit older than that. I was maybe 30. But by the by, I didn't like Atlanta. It was a lot of traffic. There's no water there. I grew up in England near the coast. And I just wanted to get back to sunshine. It can be pretty gray and miserable in the winter in Atlanta. And so I came down to Florida. I did some consulting work. I kept myself busy. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was consulting for companies that were getting into online banking and online insurance, because that's the company I sold. And And then when I met my now an ex, she had that nursery business. And so, just like from your video where Tom says, well, maybe you don't know what's going to happen like right around the corner. And so one day I'm consulting for these massive corporations that are trying to take over the world with online banking. And the next thing I'm stood, knee deep in mud with trees and shrubs around me, trying to load these trucks, that were going to Birmingham and, all over the Southeast. And that's how I started out, very early on with brokerage of truck material going all over the Southeast. I didn't even know how many wheels were on an 18-wheeler, to be honest. It was all new to me, and I learned very quickly.
Sure. And what year did you sell the second business in?
The second business was sold. It all closed on December the 31st of 2015. Sorry, of 2014, because we started Ascend. I pulled out all of the intellectual property for Ascend. So on January the 1st, 2015 is when we started Ascend. And I took two of my main guys from the brokerage and myself. I paid the private equity firm for the IP, the intellectual property, to take the code of Ascend. And I put $500,000 into an account for those guys and me. I was working there full time, got a really small, tiny office. It was, not joking, 800 square foot office. We're still in the same office complex, actually. It's funny, we've moved now 5 times since then in that time. And it's funny, it's like musical chairs. The office manager, the owner, loves us because, every time something bigger comes up, he says, hey, Tim, you want this? And we'll go, yeah, we'll take that. So, so it, I don't want to, I could go on, but bottom line, that $500,000 that we put into the business never got below $274,000. I'll never forget it. We spent 8 months building the version of Ascend that is kind of is seen by the world today. We did a soft launch, a very quiet launch, August of that year. And 8-9 hours after we kind of opened it up for the world, the first account was created, the brand new first account. And then the second account was like 2 or 3 hours later, and then the third account. And today we have 42,194. Actually, let me just refresh the screen, because we average one new account every hour of every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Last night I went to bed last night, and so now we're 42,195. So while you and I have been talking, we've got one new account was created. And as of last night, now we've got 5 new companies. As I was asleep last night, 5 new companies now started using Ascend, representing 11 human beings. So an average of about 2 people per account.
That's
paying
amazing.
Customers, by the way.
So I'm just curious because I think obviously the U.S. is the largest market for the free TMS. What's the second and third?
For us, Canada. We also have quite a few users in Mexico, especially the ones that are doing cross-border type stuff. But we have customers, paying customers in Bolivia, several countries in Africa. We actually, so we get requests of the kind of features to add. So our software supports 168 different countries, weights, measures, and currencies. But this is about 2 months ago, we got a request coming in from Rwanda, where somebody wanted the Rwanda currency. I can't remember what it was called now. The Rwanda franc or something was requested, and we added it for this one company that's a paying user to this day in Rwanda.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
That's fascinating. And then, like, what made you want to start the free TMS?
So I'm the kind of person that gets bored really quickly. You're never stop thinking about work. The first thing you think about, in the morning is work and how you can do a better job or new ideas. And so I wanted to do something, even though I sold the company in the end of 2014, 2015. I knew that I wanted to keep doing something. At the time, I'm 54 now. So at the time I was only, I was 49 or so. I've still got a long way ahead of me, I hope, anyway. And I wanted to do something. So I knew that the industry was on the cusp of massive change. And I knew that the biggest underserved portion of that industry was the small guy. So we all know that, 97 or 98% of all trucking companies are under 20 trucks. The statistics all over the internet, American Trucking Association has it on the website. 98% of all freight brokerages are under $20 million in revenue. So there's a lot of $3, $4, $5, $6 million brokerages. There's not very many $1 billion brokerages, but everybody that builds software, they go after the $1 billion guys. They build something and then they think they're going to go sign up C.H. Robinson or J.B. Hunt or Uber Freight, Convoy. Go down the list, or they're going to get into retail. They're going to get a Kroger, or they're going to go and find some huge conglomerate that owns a huge amount of companies, but they don't realize that those companies are already using something. To try to get your product to displace whatever they're using today is very, very difficult. And the sales cycle, even if they want your product, the sales cycle is really long. So if you're a typical, in our world, the TMS world, if you're Mercury, Blue Jay, if you're McLeod, TMW, and you're dealing with those very large organizations, a sales cycle might be 1 to 2 years. It's very unlikely they're going to say, hey, Paul, I want your product. Can you install it next week? It doesn't happen. They decide by committee. They ask about pricing. And when you give them the pricing, they want to negotiate the pricing to half of what you originally proposed. Or they wear you down over a 6, 9, 8, 10-month period. And so we didn't want to be in that world. So we said, where is the opportunity? The opportunity is with the small guy. They're underserved. Nobody wants to basically deal with them. And we've been told this by the names I mentioned, that they don't even call back. If a guy calls up with 5 or 6 trucks, the salesperson doesn't even call those people back. They don't even give them the pleasantry of a explanation as to why. They just don't call them back because they know a guy with 6 trucks or a broker with 4 million, 5 million in revenue cannot afford a $250,000 legacy-based TMS system that requires full-time IT staff. It requires, your own servers to run it usually, or you've got to pay the extra money to run it on their servers. And you need to buy their compulsory training and support programs. And so we went after the marketplace that was so underserved that when we quietly opened the lid to our product, people started to come in and they loved it. And to this day, our customer acquisition cost here is incredibly low because it's mainly from word of mouth. People just hear about us and they say, hey, you should try Ascend. There's a free trial for 30 days. If you don't want to keep paying after 30 days, just keep using the free version. And then if you find that you need the extra bells and whistles, just put your credit card in and you can use all the bells and whistles. And for us, it's worked.
Amazing. Kind of see you, Tim, as being like a catalyst, like revolutionary, like you're like kind of like changing the industry and in a way that's it's very positive, obviously, for the industry, like allowing the small guy to have a TMS system.
Absolutely.
For the most part, a lot of small companies have been just using an Excel sheet.
Absolutely, and many still do today, Paul. I wrote an article for TIA's 3PL Perspectives that's actually in January's issue, and it's called Digital Freight. The digital freight threat. It isn't what you think, and the threat for me, in my mind, is that everybody wants to do digital freight. C.H. Robinson does not have a problem doing business with Home Depot as their customer and J.B. Hunt as the carrier. Those people can do digital freight, but that's 0.00001% of all of the freight that's moved. The problem is it's the small guy, and unless we as an industry lift up the little guy, which is 98% of the industry, and I'm talking shippers, brokers, and carriers, we need to lift them up. If we lift them up, now digital freight can become a reality. But you can't have a world of digital freight if everybody's not participating. So somebody has to get that little guy and get him into this digital world kicking and screaming. And if they do that, and we find that once they try it, they go, wow, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do it so cheaply. I mean, we give a 100% money back guarantee. If you use Ascend TMS and you don't like it, we refund you your money. So, there's a few little asterisks there. You can't use it for 5 years and say you want a full refund. But if you use Ascend after the first 30 days, and then you put your credit card in, if 30 days later you say, no, it's not working, no questions asked, we'll refund your money. And we do that maybe once a year, sometimes not even once a year. So it's because people, the little guy, when they get to use this big boy type software, they appreciate it. That's why we have so many reviews on Capterra and Software Advice, Gartner, because people say, wow, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Ascend, for giving us something that before we didn't even have access to.
Sure. That's amazing. And I wanted to talk about the future of freight tech, because you've done a lot to change the industry. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts? How do you see the industry changing in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so there's right now a lot of startups that are trying to find ways to make freight more efficient. The biggest problem that I see most of them have, and I'm talking the vast majority here, Paul, is that they're building solutions for tomorrow, but they're not solving today's problems. So, if I was to create for you, Paul, a brand new hypercar right now, and the car hovers off the ground, and it requires some special chemical that I pour in the back to make it hover. If I give that to you, that's fantastic. That's tomorrow's, technology, right, for cars. But if that chemical that you need to pour in the back is not available to you, then, the car is basically useless. So a lot of these freight startups are building that hover car of tomorrow, but they don't realize that you need to put the fuel in of today to make the hover car work. So in order for any company, any startup that's got an idea, don't build a solution and say, this is what everybody's going to do tomorrow. You've got to make sure that it works in today's messy, paper intensive, phone call intensive world of freight. All of the nasty paperwork that goes on and the waiting to get paid from people and credit scores. You've got to have a product that works in that world, push people toward the hover car in the future. So that's what I see a lot of startups doing today, that they need to figure out how they need to solve today's problem that will bridge people into the future. You can't just build one end of the solution. And that's what I think why Ascend succeeded. We've got this solution that works in today's messy world, but we keep adding little things to inch people forward to tomorrow. And that's what they need to do.
Okay. And before our recording, you told me, Tim, that you get a lot of emails, a lot of calls from startups that would like to pick your brain and get some advice. Could you talk on that part about what kind of advice you give to startups, and how could young men and women be part of the ecosystem to make money in this industry?
Yeah, so a lot of these startups, they have an idea, they blow through their friends and family's money, which usually isn't a lot. Sounds like a lot. It might be 10, 20, $30,000. But if you're 23, 24, 25 years old, you're trying to make something work, getting friends and family money is usually the only way to get started. I get a lot of startup people call me up, and this is all pro bono. I do not charge anything. I don't ask like many people, well, I can help you with that, but I think your idea is good, and I want to have some equity. I want 1, 2, 3, 4% equity to help you out. I don't play that game. If somebody calls me up with an honest question and a need, I'll tell them my honest opinion, and that's it. There's no conflict of interest whatsoever. And so when they call me up, I find a lot of them are very confused about things like venture capital. So they've got a great little idea, and then they think that they're meant to go get venture capital money or seed capital from an outside third party. In other words, not friends and family. But I'll say, well, why do you want to do that? Because what you should really do is you don't need to go from one person to 100 people in a year. You just want to go from one person to 2 or 3 people and start to establish what your market is and make a very small profit from small revenues. And if you do that and you grow it, then you own it. You are in control of your destiny. But a lot of them seem to think that they need to go out right away with an idea and a big business plan. And because there is so much free money out there, they want to raise 5, 10, 15, $20 million on an idea. But if you've only got an idea and you go to somebody, and a lot of these VCs are sitting on massive amounts of capital. I'm a personal investor in a private equity firm, Palm Beach Capital, and I'm a pretty large private investor for them. They're down in Palm Beach. Surprise, surprise. They're called Palm Beach Capital. And so I also see the other side of this. But when these people take on that $5 or $10 million, they'll say, Paul, I'll give you the 5 million, but it's only an idea right now. So I want 50, 60, 70, 80% of that business from you because, right now it's not making any money. And so you're basically giving up the vast majority of your equity in the company in order to get 5 million. That 5 million will not last very long because they want you to immediately spend that money. And by the way, the $5 million doesn't go to you personally to go on vacation. That $5 million is to be used for business purposes only. You can pay yourself a fair salary, but the $5 million is used for business purposes. And that doesn't last very long. So eventually, and I'm talking about a year or so, you need more money. Even if you've grown your revenues and you've added some people and you're getting some traction, you've now got to go back to the trough and say, I'd like some more money, please. And they say, well, okay, we now own 60% of the company. We'll give you another 3 million, but we're going to do it at this valuation. And they're going to dilute you down, Paul, down to say 20% or less. So every time you take money from the trough, your equity amount goes down and down. But it's even worse than that. A lot of these youngsters don't realize that in the terms of these deals, the money that's being given to you is preferred stock. What does preferred stock mean? It means that it's a higher level of stock. It's got a higher priority or liquidity preference than common stock. So your 20% is like toilet paper, and their 80% of the company is like a gold leaf, a letter-headed, 20 weight card paper. It's a lot more superior to your common stock. So the 6 or 7 million now that you're in for, if you ever say to yourself, look, we're making a little bit of money, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to close it down. It's not, I need to move on with my life. They will say to you, well, you look at paragraph 17, line number 4, that $7 million, Paul, you now owe that to us. You have to pay us that. Now they might want, if there's a clause in there that personally you owe it, that's terrible. Because now for the rest of your life, you owe them $7 million. Most of these agreements will say from the company. So the company owes the 7 million to the venture firm. And so if they've got to liquidate that company, Paul ends up with nothing. They will sell the entire company to somebody and end up with the 7 million back. Their investment gets refunded, and you are left out in the cold. And I could talk about this for hours. A lot of these people, though, that call me up don't realize that that's exactly what's going to happen when the company doesn't do as well as they forecast. And everybody thinks that the company is going to do really well because you do. You're 25 years old and you're full of exuberance and you're going to be the next Uber Freight, or you're going to be big. But you don't realize as you keep taking money, they want their money back, and they're the big guys with the big lawyers. So that's why I like to help these people. I just try to give them a sense of reality and also an option. Hey, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you build a company that you can make $500,000 or $1 million a year in your pocket every year? And if you do that, you'll be very happy. You don't need to make $1 billion and be Mark Zuckerberg. You can be very happy off $1 million a year. Ask anybody with a successful, profitable business.
Yeah, definitely. You did mention, Tim, that you are a private equity investor, correct?
Yeah, I invest in several companies through the funds that Palm Beach Capital put together.
Could you tell us which companies you invest in?
Yeah, so I guess I can tell you. I don't think there's any reason I can't tell you. So Fund 3 is where I put the majority of my last investment. So private equity firms raise funds. They go to institutional investors, pension funds, and private individuals, and they raise a pot of money that's in a bucket. And that money is what's called committed capital. And that money is sits in this bucket until they find investments. The last bucket that we raised was, I think, $136 or $163 million in that bucket. And we invested in several companies. The ones that we still have holdings in are, one's called Safariland. They just went public, actually, last 2 months ago. The actual holding company is Cadre Holdings, which is, the ticker symbol is CDRE, if you want to look them up. And what they make is, Safariland is very well known for, if you want to get yourself some good prepper gear, you want to put yourself a bulletproof vest on and holsters and camouflage stuff. They sell to police departments, military, security organizations. Their business has been doing really well over the last few years. They went public the other day. I think we went public at $16. We're at $25 as of yesterday. That was a very good investment for us. We also have the second or third largest a convenience store chain called Harold Levinson. All of the Northeast convenience stores, very logistics and freight heavy, as you can imagine. And so that is also one of the investments that we invested in about 4 or 5 years ago. And several of we invested in and have since sold and very successfully. We've also had some real dogs. There was one called Digital Domain. We put $25 million in that company. And you look up Digital Domain. It was a complete farce. They went public. We put the money in. They went public, and less than a year later, they were bankrupt because of fraud. So they basically frauded us. And but they're famous. Digital Domain. Do you remember there's like a hologram that was about 10 years now, where they were the first ones to do this this hologram of a dead artist on stage using technology that's 100 years old. But they were the ones to do Tupac Shakur at one of the big, these Coachella, big summer festivals. What's that?
I think it was Coachella.
Coachella, yeah. And so we did that. We did that just before the company went public.
Wow. Your life is so fascinating, Tim. Honestly, you're such an interesting person.
If you live it, it's not quite as fascinating. I still go to the bathroom like everybody else and have to brush my teeth.
Of course. Tim, to wrap it up, I'm wondering if you could offer some advice to a 20-year-old just graduated college. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think two things really. Number one is, don't mistake your exuberance for knowledge. If you want to do something, you have to have some rudimentary knowledge of the industry you're going to do it in. So, don't become a startup unless you know something about the thing you're starting up. So if it's in freight, go work for a freight brokerage. You might hate it for a year or two, but you'll learn about it. And maybe you'll realize it's not what you want to do and you'll go do something else. So you need to have experience for 2 or 3 years in the thing that you are trying to do. I see a lot of these other TMS companies out there. And I hear, I listen to their podcasts and they've got all of these MIT type people doing the programming, but none of them spent any time in freight brokerage and trucking. All of our people did that work for us. And so I think that the reason that we've succeeded is we all live and breathe the business that we are writing software for. So that's number one. And then the second thing, which is advice I give to everybody that calls me up looking for advice, is that if you ever are lucky enough to make $5 million in net worth, you just get real lucky and you have 5 million in net worth. Don't ever risk that 5 million for 50 million in net worth. If you get to 50 million in net worth and it all works out for you, hey, hallelujah, that's fantastic. And once again, if you get to 50 million net worth, don't ever risk that for 500 million in net worth. If you get to 500 million, that, again, fantastic, but don't risk your 50 million for 500 million, because there's no real difference between people with 5 million in net worth, 50 million, and 500 million. The only difference is the guy with 500 million, he owns his own private jet. The guy with 50 million has a 16th share of his private jet. And the guy with 5 million, he leases a jet card and still flies on the same private jet. They're all flying on the same private jet and enjoying the private jet. Don't ever risk, though, going down to zero because you get so greedy, you want to keep going up. Earning $500,000 a year in salary and getting to a net worth of $5 million will give you an amazing life. And it'll be a lifestyle that the same 50 million and 500 million people live. It's just that you'll rent stuff rather than own it. And so I tell some of these kids that call me up, it's not worth the risk. If they call me up and they're making $500,000 or $1 million a year, I say, keep doing it. Keep pedaling, pedal as fast as you can, but don't risk it. Don't go off into other avenues or other products and invest all of your money in something that may or may not work. If it's working, keep pedaling and keep doing it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim, for coming on the podcast. Honestly, fascinating life. I was just zoned in here listening to you, and I appreciate you taking your time. If anyone wants to connect with Tim, I think LinkedIn is probably the best page. Yeah. LinkedIn, Tim Hyam. I respond to, unlike most CEOs, if you reach out to me, I am a big believer in paying it forward. I had some amazing mentors when I was younger. I'm near the end of my career now. And so if people need help, need advice, reach out to me and you will get a reply, or you can email me
T Hyam at inmotionglobal.com. But LinkedIn's the best way, and you will get a response from me.
Awesome. And definitely check out the FreightTMS.com. Thanks again, Tim. And that's a wrap for episode 14.
Thanks, Paul.